Welcome to the Triclinium, a podcast named after the three-sided table used in the Lord's Supper, where you're invited to join the three of us as we think through matters of Christian faith, practice, and community. My name's Eric Bergers. I'm here with my co-hosts Jacob Hawley and Nate Lead. Today we're going to be discussing AI as kind of our general topic, but as you may figure, if you've listened to us for a little while now, this is going to dive into a number of other minor topics as we continue to discuss it. So, as we normally do, before we get into it, how are you guys doing?
I was just waiting for you to say cohorses, and then I started laughing.
Is that why you were snickering in the background there?
I'm sorry.
I was hoping you wouldn't see that, Eric, but
I intentionally did not look at my camera while I was reading that.
Oh man, today's gonna be a goofy day. So I'm doing well. I'm tired, and I really shouldn't be because I did almost nothing yesterday. But sometimes when you do nothing the day before, it's like it actually makes you more tired because your body's just like, what the heck happened yesterday? So anyways, yeah, I don't know. My brain's a little out
sorry,
today.
I heard you say goofy. We were just at the Dollar Tree, and I saw a can of Goofy string. Not silly string, it was Goofy string. I just had to say that. I'm
That's
sorry.
so funny.
Off-brand silly string?
Dude.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
My intrusive thoughts
hilarious
on that one.
string.
Yeah. Hilarious string.
That's so funny. Really fast. I would love to start a new tradition here on the Triclinium podcast of asking.
Does it involve Goofy
one,
string?
It doesn't. I'll work on one for that. But I would love to start a tradition where we have like a funny question that we each answer before we start the serious talk. And so my question to try out this tradition is, if you could take out one organ from your body and run it under some water and just feel it, like feel what it is, you know, like run your hands over it, what would it be like from the inside of you? What would you want to feel on the Nate's getting lightheaded. He's about to pass out.
Small intestine.
Small intestine?
Yeah, that's the string you
All
run,
right.
right?
Yeah.
Do a little jump rope with it, put it right back in there.
Yeah. Stuff it back in.
I'm fine.
Oh man, Nate.
I'm fine.
Are you okay, Nate? Are you okay? Oh man.
Yeah.
He's in a different realm right now.
I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't know. I feel like Eric has. I feel like you've done that, Eric, where you've taken out like a deer's small intestine or something, and you've done something crazy with it. And then
I mean, yes, I have.
Deer.
I have disemboweled deer. I did mess around with the small intestine one time.
Oh my gosh, dude, what is this with this guy in the small intestine?
The gross.
It's like a preoccupation.
This is good. Actually, I'm not going to say that. That might be too gross for some people. Never mind. Never mind.
Yeah,
all right.
I guess my brain.
Like Nate, actually. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I would love to feel the grooves. You know, you got to feel the grooves,
dude.
You guys
so many
are really
grooves.
Part of the intelligentsia here.
Yeah,
I'm over here jump roping with my small intestine, and you guys are discovering the innermost parts
like
of the brain.
Absolute plebeian. Oh my god. All right, well, thanks for indulging me. That question came from my buddy Chris. He's a youth leader. We were running a small group of kids, and these kids like had not been to youth group in probably like years or ever, and it was only those kids, right? So we pooled a whole group of kids who had just never been to youth group, and it was so uncomfortable because all of them were new and they were all just like, you know, quiet and shy. And Chris, my great friend Chris, out of nowhere comes up with this question. He's like, all right, I got a question for you guys. If you could run any organ from your body under some nice warm water and just feel it, what would you want to feel? And all the kids got into it. And so I was like, I'm going to use that. And I don't know where he came up with that, but it was
hilarious. Great. Yeah, maybe
all right, kids. Now, which one would Jesus do?
Yeah. Next question. Yeah. Actually, Chris is a pretty common listener to the podcast. So if you're listening, hello,
that's
Chris.
very nice. What was the consensus among the kids? Did they come up with
man.
one?
I think like, oh man, I would have to. I think it was like, I think eyes came up a couple of times. I think brain was a pretty common one.
Really?
Yeah,
Eyes?
I can't remember.
Oof. That's kind of shocking.
You ever want to?
Yeah.
I mean, it would be hard to look at them because they are the looking. You know what I mean?
Did they say it though so they could look at themselves from a?
Oh yeah, we've all wanted to do that, right? Like
but like just use a mirror. Like I wouldn't want to see an eyeless version of myself.
An eyeless you. Yeah, that's true. That is a horror.
It's like with the soul taken
you never
out,
forget that.
It's like
yeah.
You're gonna see yourself differently after that.
Let's wrangle it back into AI.
For sure. Nate, we didn't get you. I'm sorry. I jumped in with my stupid question first. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. Yeah, no. It's the 4th of July weekend, and my office was open yesterday, but I decided to take a vacation day to hang out with Lauren and just do nothing around the house. So we have a long weekend together, so we are loving life.
So you also woke up tired
from
doing nothing yesterday. Yeah.
Yep. I woke up, and so this weekend, one of my big tasks was to go through all of my books. And so I had like 3 large moving boxes worth of books. And a lot of them came from an old professor of ours, Professor Janine Graham. Mm-hmm. And
Miss Graham.
Yeah, like old school books like that I picked up when I knew I was going to start working in the church, or when I was graduating with my undergrad in ministry. And so I picked up a ton of books on like youth ministry and like marriage counseling and all this stuff, and I just held on to them. And so I went through all of them and put them away, or moved them to like a donate bin, and sorted out the ones I wanted to keep and the ones I didn't want to keep or donate. And I found my old Kindle, like my old little like old school Kindle e-ink display. I think it's called a Paperwhite. And
I have one of those.
It had a little, like, it was out of battery obviously, and I plugged it in and it started charging, and
no way,
it booted up, and it's been dead for like 3 years. I haven't booted it up since I got married, I think. And that was the last time I moved and organized all the books into the boxes.
Gotcha.
Oh, man.
And so I booted it up, and I have books on it still, and I started reading one called King Solomon's Mines. And it's like one of the first like treasure hunting stories. Not one of the first, but like one of the first generation of treasure hunting stories, set in the 1800s, old school treasure hunting deal. And it's really fun to have consumed so many like fun stories about treasure hunting and whatnot, and then to read an old school story, you kind of see some of the tropes and whatnot, but it feels so like otherworldly and just like old worldy, that it's still such an interesting read. So would recommend King Solomon's Mines to anybody out there who wants a fun page turner. So anyway, sorry, that would go better with our conversation on story, but we're talking about AI today.
I was about to say that feels like it would fit really well with the other topic that we didn't choose for today. But yeah. So guys, this last weekend I was using AI to do something. I was not. I did try to use AI yesterday on Facebook to find something, a post that I had run across and I couldn't find again, and it was terrible. It was like, I can't search social media for you, and I was like, you're Facebook AI. Like that's what you're supposed to do. Like, you are social media. What else do you do? So anyways,
I bet your search was like theology memes.
No, it was not. No, but it could have been any other day. Yes, it could have been any other day. I'm subscribed to several groups. So Eric, why don't you kick us off with our topic today?
Well, I think you kind of just did, but that it's a good starting point. Like, maybe just giving a brief, like, what's your personal experience with AI thus far? For me, like, I've used ChatGPT here and there just to mess around with it. Like, no, I don't use it on my homework assignments. Actually, Southern Seminary and Boyce College, they're one on the same campus, I should say. So they're both governed pretty closely. and they banned ChatGPT and other uses of AI not long ago, like pretty quickly after it really blew up into a thing. Because
how do you ban that? What does that mean?
Essentially what that means is on the syllabus, it's stated for the record, if you're found out that you've used AI technology to enhance your work or to do your work for you.
Oh, okay.
Things. I think that's
so not to do research though. You could use it for research. You just couldn't use it to like
perhaps
you couldn't plagiarize basically.
Yeah, I think that's probably, if I had to guess, that's probably what and I think that's what the syllabus is kind of make clear. Their main concern is plagiarism, I think, or if you can even call it that, because it's technically writing it for you. So
Yeah.
They want you to do your own original work. That's what's made clear. And so it's my understanding that certain, especially in the undergraduate
they
scene,
have to be so hard.
Yeah, in the undergraduate scene, it seems to be more of a problem. But so there's anyways, so I've when Briar was born, I was messing around with it, and I asked it to write a poem for Briar, like for my unborn son or something like that. And it was like one of the most beautiful poems like I've ever read. I don't think I kept it, unfortunately. I should have, but
you should have framed it and given it to him.
Yeah.
When he turned 16. Yeah, this is a poem.
I wrote this for you, kind of.
Yeah, kind of.
The capabilities on AI are real, but there is real like lack in ability still there pretty clearly. Like I used it one time to grammar check something I had wrote, and I read the whole thing again, and I don't think it did anything to what I had written.
Yeah,
so either I spelled everything right and had perfect grammar, or
I believe that
AI's got some work to do.
I could believe it about you that you had perfect grammar and yet you still second guessed your grammar. So
and through AI.
I was like, it's good.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't think so.
Would you believe me if I said I don't proofread papers typically? I typically don't proofread. I just turn them in.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Not in seminary.
Well, if you get the rules of grammar well enough, then you don't have to proofread.
I guess, yeah. So that's kind of the extent of my use as ChatGPT, just messing around with it a little bit here and there.
Yeah, totally.
Gotcha.
Dude, on the topic of plagiarism, I am anti-plagiarism, just so everyone knows my position on plagiarism, okay? And I get it.
Here's the referendum.
As if anybody is pro-plagiarism.
Yeah, right.
Here's the shocking statement. Here
obviously,
comes.
Plagiarism is wrong. You know, you don't want to pawn somebody else's work off as your own. That's irresponsible, illegitimate, and wrong.
And you'll go to hell if you do it.
But I got marked for plagiarism once at George Fox. I got marked. It was in it was in a psychology class. I worked really hard on this paper. Okay. And I turned it in. I forget exactly what the paper was on, because I only remember the result of turning in that paper. And my psychology professor brought me in and was like, hey, this looks like it was, like, I got a 0 on it. And so I saw my grade first, and I was like, hey, prof, like, I need to talk to you about this. And he was like, yeah, man, this was, like, plagiarized. I was like, what are you talking about? I was so mad because I worked so hard on this paper, because I really liked psychology. And so I worked really hard on it, and he was like, yeah, like this, like, and he kind of walked me through it, and I was like, so, like, what happens now? Like, obviously I didn't mean to plagiarize it. Like, something was wrong in my citations or something.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like, I didn't properly cite or something.
Okay.
That's so dumb.
And so he was like, well, it's a 0. And I was like, is there, like, any grace with this? Or, like, what, like, I didn't know I was plagiarizing. Like, and he's like, well, this is the grace. Like, you can rewrite it. And I was like, what are you talking? He's like, you have to rewrite it. You have to rewrite a completely different topic. It has to be a completely new paper.
Oh, that's not grace.
So
That's law.
I crammed over a weekend. I think it was like 3 or 4 days, because I had to get it in. Right. And he was like, I'll give you like another, couple days over the weekend to rewrite this paper. And so I did, crushed it, like totally changed topics, researched, cited everything. I had my mom check it. I was like, is this cited properly? And She was like, yeah, turn it in. I was like, great. Turn it in, and I got like a C on it. And I was like, dude, this sucks. So that ruined psychology for me. I had
Expose
a bad
this professor
for it.
right now.
I don't even remember his name, dude. Like, because it's just not worth the brain power and the resentment. But I still feel it, obviously. Because I was like, I worked so hard on that paper, dude, and he got me. You know, he called me on it, but I wasn't trying, obviously. So I was so frustrated with plagiarism.
That's injustice.
Yeah. So anyway,
insert ChatGPT.
Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wish I could have had ChatGPT back then. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, I just had to go on that little rant about plagiarism because it's wrong. Don't do it. But I'm also like, you know, is it always plagiarism? I don't know, because I worked really hard on that paper and I didn't mean to plagiarize. So whatever.
Yeah.
But in regards to AI, I mean, what AI is it's just a really complex search engine and language generator. So it is just a really complex piece of code that can scour through every piece of information and writing on the internet, and then it comes up with
it's crazy.
With advanced language that it thinks like goes in order. So, you know, sometimes it gets it wrong and it has like weird grammar or whatnot, but it basically just generates language that it thinks it like the way that it was described to me by a tech guy that I know. He's like, it's literally producing one word at a time, and it's generating that word based on the last word and what it thinks goes in that place. So,
which is crazy.
It is crazy.
Like, think about predictive text. So like when you're on your iPhone and you have those three little options for what comes next. And you like start, most people at home have tried this, I'm sure, where you just start tapping it over and over again. You just see what it says, and it's just this like string of incoherent rambling, right?
Yeah.
And somehow we've been able to take the like little technology there and transform it into something that can create full paragraphs of like coherent text. Like, that's wild.
It is. It is crazy, and it's so interesting because it's learning off of itself too. So not only is it learning off of every piece of writing that's ever been digitized, but it's learning off of all of the things that it's generating in the past, which is why sometimes, actually Drew Gooden just did a video on this, like AI's ruining everything.
Yes.
And he talks about images and videos and whatnot. Well, a lot of like images that you can look up for free on like Unsplash or like royalty-free images, a lot of them are AI created now, and a lot of them, when you ask an AI to create an image, it's using that backlog of AI created images to create the image you're trying to create.
Oh, gross.
And so, exactly, that's why AI images are coming out like hauntingly gross and like terrible, and a lot, you know, some of them are pretty good.
Yes.
But a lot of them are like super weird, like they still can't get hands right. It's really interesting because it's using other AI generated pictures to generate the next picture. So it's really interesting.
But what's really fascinating about that phenomena of it being unable to get small details right, like there's that trope where like, okay, well, look at the background of whatever image if you want to see if it's AI generated. You look at the background, and like if the grate on the car is in the wrong place, or if there's like a string of letters that don't make quite enough sense together, right? Like it's misspelled, or like, you know, there's weird spacing, then you can tell. I think the fascinating thing about that is that because it actually, I think it speaks to human demand and how humans process images, because from what I understand of AI, it's originally trained off of user input. So it's taking what you want, or it's taking your questions, right, that you're asking it, your requests. It's giving you an idea, like it's giving you something, it's outputting something, right? We don't really know what happens between input and output, right? It's scraping all the data off of the web. and then it giving you something. We don't really know what happens in between those 2 points. We don't, like, there's not like a defined set of coding. Like, it's kind of, it figures itself out. It puts through different mechanisms on its own to try to give different results. But it learns which internal mechanisms work based off of how the humans that are interacting with it respond to what it's giving them, right? So if it's positive, if they're like, yeah, that's what I was looking for, then the machine goes, okay, whatever I just did, I'm going to solidify that and do that again, right? Or I'm going to tweak it again, and I'm going to try it next time, but a little bit different. So the fascinating thing about that is that means that, like, for the most part, and I think you can see this on, like, Facebook when you have people that are posting, you know, videos or pictures that are absolutely AI generated, but they can't tell, right? And so they're posting this thing and they're like, wow, check out this crazy piece of news footage, or check out the, you know, this new announcement, right? And it's totally AI synthesized, but they can't tell. Is we tend to not look at the details as humans. We tend to look at the big picture. And so it's prioritized getting the foreground right, whatever's in the foreground. Mm-hmm. And it knows that it can kind of cheat on the background, and we won't care and we won't notice, right? And most of the time it's right. We don't care. But like we keep those little artifacts in the background to almost as like a litmus test of is this AI or not, right?
Totally. Yeah, the funniest use that I've heard, and this is from that Drew Gooden video, and I'd recommend everybody just go check it out because he's really funny, and he puts a lot of work into his videos. It's his most recent one. He only posts once a month. But he was talking about AI, and he brought up so he was talking about AI images, and he said the craziest use of AI imagery that he's ever heard of was this image that was created for a Netflix documentary. So it was about this I don't know, a murderer or murder victim. I'm not sure exactly. I haven't seen the documentary, but he pulled up the image, and it's like they created an AI image of this woman who is accused of something, to make it look like she is just a happy person. She's like posing in the photo like at a party, and it's like her hands are off, and the dresser behind her is like a weird lines, and the door just disappears, and it's like it's crazy to think that they are, for the sake of their story and in a documentary, they're using AI generated images.
I'll do you one up. ABC announced that for the Olympics, for the golf highlights reels that are come out, they're little 2-minute highlight reels that are going to go on as golf is being played in the Paris Olympics. They're using Al Michaels' voice, but AI, to narrate those highlight videos. So Al Michaels is a very famous commentator. He does both golf and the NFL. And I'm assuming they had to have Al Michaels sign off on this to be able to use his voice.
Al Michaels is like reading this and he's like, wait, what? What if they're doing what with my...
Well,
yeah, Al Michaels, if you're listening.
Yeah.
Maybe ABC has rights to Al Michaels' voice, and so they can just do what they want.
That is crazy. That makes me think that Morgan Freeman is going to be narrating... Like David Attenborough is going to be narrating every nature movie for the rest of eternity. Yeah. You know,
I think the voice things are some of the craziest uses of AI that I've seen.
That is crazy.
Like people making songs from different artists, and artists having to like go out of their way to ban or like seek legal retribution like against people that use their voice illegally online is crazy to me.
Dude, personally, I don't know if this is, you know, good to be putting out, but like I'm nervous. Well, actually, it's for this exact reason. Putting a podcast on the internet of my voice, you know, my fear is that they can synthesize my voice and then scam family members.
They've been doing. Did you hear about that?
Yes. No. Dude, no. That's actually
I've been
happening.
hearing more. I went to a business meeting on behalf of my boss. He has like a little meeting that he goes to sometimes, and sometimes he can send a sub. And I went for him, and there's like a little circle where people are going around and sharing different things about their business or something they found important or something like that. And a tech guy stands up and he goes, you need to tell everybody in your family to be very wary of AI. They've found ways to, if you answer a phone call that's from a specific person or group or something like that, they can voice record you off of the phone call, snip your voice, and then use it or get your voice and use it via AI to call your family members and ask them for help, like, and your credit card information or something like that. So your family can literally think it's you calling them asking for help, and it's not, and they're just using AI. So big picture, maybe to swing this into a more theological mindset, like, this is a big problem on like multiple fronts, like for different people, for lying, sin in a number of different ways, lying probably the most foremost one, but also the like issues with the Imago Dei, issues with how
go into more detail on that one. The Imago Dei.
It's complicated. It's hard to like pin down because this is such a fresh topic. It's hard to pin down exactly what's going on. But like a classic understanding of what the Imago Dei is, and I'm not saying you guys agree with this, but it is a very historically precedented view, is that the Imago Dei has to do something with humans' capability of reasoning and intellect. It's our capacity to reason, to utilize reason that sets us apart from, say, the animal kingdom or something of the nature. And if that is solely your interpretation of what AI is, of what the Imago Dei is, then AI is going to pose a real threat to like what the Imago Dei even is. Like, because I was thinking about asking you guys this, like what is the difference between the AI's ability to just general abilities, I guess you could say, and the human's ability to reason? Because I was sitting there thinking, like, okay, I heard what Nate said before, like AI is basically really good at searching things really fast and then coming up with words based on the patterns it finds upon its searches. Like, is the human brain different than that? Is that how we do things? Or
so this is a great question. This is almost providential. I feel like I was just talking about this with my dad a couple days ago. And I think that, so from my understanding, what AI is doing is it still requires human engagement in order to obtain its objective. Yeah. So in other words, humans have, and this is, you could maybe tie this back to the idea of the knowledge of good and evil, right? Like, what does it mean to have the knowledge of good and evil? I think that what it means is that we have the ability to discern between what's good and what's bad. And that means we have value structures, right? And our value structures are based off of our own, they're based in our own self in a way that I don't think can be true of AI. I don't think an AI has the ability to evaluate and to discern the good from the bad. Yes. It receives its good, it receives its objective, its mission, its goal from an exterior agent, from something outside of itself, right? So it's us. We are the ones that guide it. And so in that way, I still think AI is largely a tool. That being said, tools can go incredibly wrong, right? Like, you can, if you're using a saw and you don't operate it safely. Eric is showing his thumb because he crushed his thumb this week.
With a tool?
With a tool. You can cause catastrophic damage. So what I'm not saying is like AI is safe and fine and don't worry about it, but I still think that it's not in the realm yet of like existential threat to humanity, because it's still something that is subservient to the human will. The only way that it would be able, and this is the thing that concerns me about AI, from what I can manage to understand about it, and it's a really complicated topic, so I hope I don't listen back to this in 5 years and go, oh my gosh, I was such an idiot. But from what I can manage to understand about it, AI is oh shoot, my brain like went away. So the objective is given by humanity. An objective that's given to AI by humanity, it might take it so seriously. It might be almost a good way of describing it is it's almost like an ignorant genie, right? So oftentimes the idea of a genie, like the old stories of the genie, are that like somebody asks something from the genie, right? They give one of their wishes, and the genie turns it on them or takes it too literally in some way. And so like usually the genie is like kind of a malevolent and wants to do that just to like get at the humans. I'm not saying it will be malevolent. I think what will happen is it will misunderstand a human objective. So something like we need to optimize the amount of water that we have on Earth, right? Because like we're running out of water, and it going on a spree, like let's say clean water, right? And then it goes and you know, if it can be embodied in some way, right, or it has some sort of physical operation in the world, let's say it starts draining the oceans and cleaning out, desalinating all the oceans, and all of the fish die, and then you have a massive like outcome of like no animal life in the seas, and then the algae and like all of this, like there's oxygen levels are changed because of that. Like I could see something crazy like that happening where it takes it literally but in the wrong way, and like we're but I don't have any concerns about it taking over as something that's
on par with human
intelligent.
Intellect.
Yeah, because it can't discern.
Well, it's not self-conscious.
That is the whole thing, is it would be ignorant.
Yeah,
right.
You know that's the whole worry. You know, that's the Terminator, that's the Matrix, that's the the sci-fi worry is that AI will become self-conscious, but AI at its core still needs to be given instruction. You know, it cannot move itself. You know.
Right.
Like
Right. Yes.
So
yes,
it requires the input of people. Now, does it get to a point where, like you just said, we can give it an input and it misunderstands and does something catastrophic? Potentially. You know, that depends on how much power we give it. And so it takes real discerning people, and people that ultimately love humans and want the best for humans, and the ability to say no to certain things. You know, I was thinking about this this concept of like, what if humans collectively just said like no to progressing technology? And obviously that's what the Amish do in certain communities. It's like they say no, we're good with that technology, like cell phones. So interesting. You know, they refuse to get cars because they see the flip side of what it would do to them. So it's really interesting too, just to think like, man, at some point,
the Amish were right all this time.
Yeah, maybe, but at some point we're gonna have to be able to say no, we're not doing that, because it could lead to terrible things down the road. Right. I'm not a doom and gloom guy. Like, I'm not trying to worry us or spread any sort of like fear or anything like that. Yeah. But it is looking at AI and looking at its capabilities and just being able to say, man, this is right now it's a great piece of technology for like researching, and like you've even seen Google like start implementing AI on search results. Like you'll ask Google a question, and instead of bringing up an article, it'll bring up a summary of articles. And so it's like, I don't know how far away is the sun, and it'll give you the full like analysis of it. Or you can ask it a more robust question, and it can give you a summary of like, and that's kind of how I've been using it. I've been using AI as kind of like a search engine replacement. For one, because it provides great summaries, mostly accurate at times. But like if I wanted a summary on Plato, I could ask Gemini or whoever, and it would give it to me in bite-sized chunks. And it's not something that I have to go and like find a good article and then read through and try and understand. And then I can even ask it like, hey, could you explain this topic? Like, could you explain Plato's thesis in a relatable way? Or like, how would you explain this to a 5-year-old or whatever? And it will give you a good example of how to do that. And so it's like, it's a great tool, and maybe that's where we lead into how we should be using it as pastors and Christians. Because a big question going on around right now, especially in churches, is like, can pastors use ChatGPT? And like, would you use ChatGPT to help in a sermon? Or, you know, I've even seen some pastors like just use ChatGPT sermons, which is crazy to me.
It's an interesting question. Yeah, maybe you raised a couple of points there, Nate, that had me thinking. Like, for one, I think kind of what we're saying is what makes this so tricky is there's good aspects about a tool and there can be harmful aspects about the tool. With AI, it seems like the potential for harmful aspects of the tool is pretty great. Like, we can feasibly imagine that it gets to the point of self-consciousness, whatever that means. Like, will it get there is an entirely separate question, but nevertheless, it causes the human race really to pause and to think about this tool. Like, I mean, thinking societally as well, like it's well, like, talked about in the United States government already, like in especially in different state legislature. Like, I think Florida has banned certain aspects of AI, if I'm not mistaken. But so the danger of AI is definitely there. But as Nate highlighted, there's plenty of good things that it can do as well. And that's when it comes to the realm of pastoral ministry, though, like as you just raised, I think it kind of wraps back into what I was saying and how my seminary has taken the approach to it is, I think, generally speaking, like, it shouldn't get to the point where this tool is doing the work for you, like all of the work. God has gifted you specifically with different spiritual gifts and abilities to be able to carry out his mission on the earth to advance his kingdom. He hasn't given those tools, as we've clearly highlighted so far, to artificial intelligence. So maybe that would be a good discernible point of reference for people if they're listening to this, like, to say that, you know, perhaps it might be useful in some ways, like grammar check or something of a sermon or something that you've outlined for yourself. I don't think I would be opposed to that in principle. And it would be wise to use it in such a way as like a tool, kind of like we've said. But yeah, if it gets to the point where it's like taking over your work for you, then I think you're almost denying the gifts that God has given you personally in order to sidestep that for something else, I guess. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to Imago Dei, you know, which is, plainly, so Imago Dei is Latin, plainly translated to image of God, right? Yeah. So, and the theological basis for that is the story of Genesis, when God creates, everything. He creates the heavens and the earth and the waters and the fish and the sea and the birds of the air and the creatures of the land, and but he fills the earth, and then he says, "But let us create something in our image," and he creates man, Adam or Adam, however you want to say it, and that's really the distinguishing piece between humans and the rest of the earth, is that humans are created in the image of the Creator. You know, that we are imbued with his characteristics, with logic and reason, and with the ability to love and understand, and with the ability to create as well, Adam and Eve.
Yes.
And so when we talk about AI and we talk about Imago Dei, humans are made in the image of God, and that's why we believe that every human has value. Every person is loved and is loved by their Creator. And AI is I don't know the Latin for it, but AI is basically the image of man. You know, if we're the Imago Dei, AI is the image of man. It's our attempt to create something outside of just humanity and whatnot. And humans are our ability of we have a capacity to create beautiful things like buildings and paintings and families and love and trust and all these things, and yet we're capable of great sin at the same time because of the fall. And I think AI is man's attempt to maybe play God at some point. That I think that's the deeper spiritual level of AI. I know on the surface level it's like, oh, it's just a tool, it's a complex language generator that uses all the digitized content on the internet. And it's like, yeah, that is what it is, but at the same time, like when you see robots coming out of Boston Dynamics or whatever, that can be programmed in a specific way, when they get AI injected into them, what do you call that other than man's attempt to create something in our own image,
Oof, that would be almost like an ultimate offense. Like, wow, yeah, that's when you put it that way. But yeah, you raise a good point. I think what you're saying here, Nate, is even if, and this is just another point to make on this topic, even if AI were to get to the point where it very closely, if not synonymously, mirrors human capacity for reason and human, just the Imago Dei in general, whatever we conceive that to be, like at the foundation of it all, it can never attain the Imago Dei because humans created artificial intelligence. So it will always be subservient, like always underneath the human will and human capacity because of how we developed it in the first place, I guess you could say. Jacob, you look like you were going to say something. I'm sorry if I cut you off.
Yeah. Well, so, man, I'm like, there's like 4 different places I'm at right now. So on that piece that you just said, Imago Dei is a title that's not given by humanity to humanity. It's given by God, yes, right? So that's the important factor, right? AI could be the Imago Dei, but what would need to happen is God would need to say it, right? He would need to be the one to claim it as that, which I don't think is probably going to happen. One of the things that came to mind while you were talking was that I think it's a fantastic analogy that we've created something like the image of man, right? And I think that it highlights the difference in being between humanity and God, the way that we interact with our respective creations. God doesn't need humanity. Humanity isn't a tool for God, right? Humanity isn't something that God uses to enhance his own dignity.
Yes.
God uses humanity, does things alongside humanity, partners with humanity in order to enhance humanity's dignity, right? This is the idea of the servant, God becoming the servant that comes and suffers on behalf of his creation. Yes. So imagine giving your life for AI, right? Giving your life, dying for AI, right? I think that's the analogy. Is like
this is great.
We can't conceive in that concept because the immediate thought would be, well, wait, AI is there to serve me, and that highlights the absurdity of what God does with us.
Yes,
that we are there from a conventional standpoint, or a conventional deism. We are there to serve God, but God reveals to us that actually all the things that he requires of us are to form us, and for our own good, for our own sake, that he requires nothing of us and is willing to go so far as the cross to show us that he's willing to give himself for us.
To serve us too,
To serve us, right. So I think that's important. I think this would be an interesting question, so I'm going to throw this out there. To go back into like the particularities of AI.
Very well said, by the way, Jacob, on that last point before you go to the next one.
Thanks. That's I'm looking at a picture of Jesus on the cross right now, and I'm like, huh, yeah. So the question I had was, we are, to a certain degree, ministers of the word. So do you guys think that... let's lay the foundation first by saying, do you guys think that you can ever consider a sermon the Word of God?
So
there's an old Lutheran conception,
in
right?
some capacity, yeah. I think even Scripture highlights it as that, like,
right.
Yeah, particular sermons are the kerygma, in the same way that it uses that same Greek word kerygma of both the Word of God in regards to Scripture and to the preaching of the Word of God as people go out and deliver God's Word.
Yeah, I would believe that too, just because the gospel lived in the disciples post Christ, right? And people came to faith, and the church was built on the gospel being spread orally without the text. So yeah, I would agree with that.
So you believe, okay, so preaching can be a basis that communicates the Word of God.
Right.
Would you say it always? Another question. Would you say it always is?
It's a trickier question.
Yeah.
I think so long as it's subservient to, man, I really don't want to get into inspiration here. So long as it's subservient to the scriptural Word of God, and in accordance with it, I would say yes. From my particular view, yeah.
Yeah, to go along with Eric, that I could get up and I could preach the Word, and I could misquote a scripture or a verse, and then I would be wrong, and my interpretation of that misquote might be wrong, and so then I would say that's wrong, and that wouldn't be.
So the human error becomes the you could say the differentiator or the decider on whether or not something is Word of God.
Yeah, I won't say it's the only one potentially, but definitely the one that sticks out to me right now.
Okay. I don't think I'm far from you guys. So I think the question that comes to mind for me is, can AI preach the Word of God?
Well, I mean, going back to our previous, AI cannot be without first being told. It does not generate itself. It first needs to move. And so if I ask AI to summarize the gospel or to come up with something for the gospel, that's still me prompting it. So AI itself, maybe not.
So I've got students who, it's really fascinating the culture that we're creating nowadays. I've got students who are on TikTok sharing the gospel. Let's say one of my students feels a call to do that, but doesn't feel particularly strong in their ability to preach, and so they have they type in ChatGPT, give me a summary of the gospel that would reach a Gen Z audience, and then they have an AI voice read it, but they post it on their Facebook page or whatever. Is that preaching the Word?
Hold on, I would want to back up first before you go that far. I think you skipped a number of steps in there.
Sure.
Because if that particular student is feeling a calling from God to spread the gospel on TikTok, perhaps that is a real thing. I think if that really was God's call, God would give them the ability to do that with their own capabilities as well. Now, I'm not saying that magically one night they have no idea what they're doing, and then the next, like, all of a sudden, like, they're preaching masters. Like, that's not what I'm trying to say. Although it's not without the realm of possibility. Of course, God could do that if he wanted to. What I am saying is, like, it takes hard work and courage to be able to develop particular skills to do those things. I would encourage that student to do that if that's what they felt like they were supposed to do, was to preach the gospel on TikTok. If they really had a strong conviction about it. I would caution them in skipping straight to, kind of as I put it earlier, like the sidestep tool to be able to do that, like automatically. Now, you could press me and say, well, what if they were using that to help develop that skill within themselves to do it? And perhaps ChatGPT or AI could be helpful in learning to be able to do it themselves. But I would very much caution against them using that specific tool just to do that, because it would feel like sidestepping the process of learning and developing and discerning that should be like in themselves first, I guess you could say.
But the question I asked wasn't, would you recommend them do this? Because I could quickly say, I would not recommend people do this. I do think there's a certain dignity that needs to be fostered and maintained in the discipline of preaching. But my question is the gospel preached?
If they did do such a thing and just look to ChatGPT immediately, could they find the gospel from ChatGPT?
Yeah, like if they had ChatGPT read in an artificial voice the gospel, is the gospel preached?
So you're like,
yeah.
So
I would need to know more details about this. I don't feel like it's specific enough. Like, did they type in what they wanted to say to have ChatGPT read it for them? Did ChatGPT do all of the work
prompt,
and they just read it over a little bit, and ChatGPT is reading it for them as well, and so it's like all of the work goes to ChatGPT? Like, there's a number of factors. Like,
I want to in this example, just to kind of push it to its absurd, I want to maximize the amount that ChatGPT is doing, right? So they typed in summary of the gospel that will reach Gen Z.
Okay. ChatGPT spits it out
ChatGPT
and
gives
reads it.
And reads it. The student reads it beforehand. That's it. But is the gospel preached? This really presses, I think, into our understanding of what the gospel is and like how it transmits.
Yeah, I mean, if the words that ChatGPT spits out like are in accordance with the basic gospel message, then I think you'd have to say yes. But and not only that, it still goes back to the point Nate has made over and over. It's still subservient to the will of the human being, because the human being will have to sign off on the particular words that are being used for the video. Sure. So it still doesn't transcend any sense of imago Dei or human rationality or human will in any way, like even if that's what they were doing. But I think maybe what I'm sidestepping and touching, and maybe we're just missing each other here, is more of the ethics of how things are being done.
Yeah, I think this is entirely unethical.
Yeah.
So like, I can throw that out there. So
I mean, yes, but yes, this is a very, in my opinion, it's very highly unethical to do that.
My principle that I would draw that from, because I do agree with you, Eric, is I think you'd have to say that the gospel is preached, is when Paul is writing. Oh shoot, I can't remember where he writes this. But he's writing about the guy that's preaching
I know what you're talking about.
False conscience, right? And he's like well, it doesn't matter to me, the gospel is being preached. It doesn't matter what his heart is while he's preaching the gospel is preached. That is fascinating, because what he's basically saying is God can use let's say people with false motives. Right, like with where the heart is not aligned, right, in order to do the work that the gospel must do, right? Like so another, I think a great analogy for this actually is the scriptures themselves. The scriptures are, and this is something my buddy taught me to think this way, and I think this is right, is the scriptures are a technology. They are a way, like the medium of a written text is a technology.
Correct.
And so if it's a tool, right? It's a way that that language can be preserved long past the ability for a person to articulate them. So would you say the scriptures are a person? Like, I would say no, but I would say that God uses them, right? Like, and has all throughout church history used them even where there's no voice to preach them, right? So I'm thinking like Augustine, take up and read, right? Like, it's there's a notion in which the gospel can be preached without humans.
Yes.
And that's crazy to think about, right? So like I think there are going to be questions that arise in the midst of this. So I want to say that like God has the ability to use anything in order to communicate his gospel message. Now, that being said, it does not reflect well on us if we are doing that, right? Like I don't think it's ethical. But that I do think that we should get deeper into that as we kind of close up here. Like, why not? Right? Like,
why is it unethical?
How much? Yeah, like, what is it exactly about preaching through, or like being very technologically heavy in our preaching that like begins to diminish? Like, what is it that's diminished? Like, what if I use commentaries to preach, that's a form of technology as well, right? It's utilizing and fast tracking my interpretation of the text. But most people would not say that commentary use is diminishing a sermon. It actually probably makes it better, right? So like
it can though.
It can diminish, absolutely. So what's the linchpin in all that?
Sure. Yeah, maybe that would be good to save for another episode, because I think there's a number of directions that you could take.
Yeah, no, I have 2 directions on my mind right now.
Me as well. So I think that would probably be good to save. But that's a great question, Jacob.
It is.
Darn. So all right.
To back up a little bit.
Tune in next time.
I think I'm totally with you. I don't think I disagreed with anything you said about AIs thus far. Yeah, in principle, it definitely can be used by God. Yeah, God can use anything, and you said that. God can use anything. It doesn't matter. It could be like I mean, I think of the famous story with Martin Luther. I think he was out walking one day, and there was a storm going on, and lightning. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Lightning hits a tree in front of him or something, and like
it was striking all around.
Strikes
him.
in front of him or something. Something physically like interrupts the path that he was walking. And at that moment, he like gets super afraid, and he cries out a specific saint's name, like when that Saint Anne, when that happens. And I think he looks back on that story and realizes that his crying out to Saint Anne wasn't probably the right thing to do, if I remember right.
Right.
But regardless, like, it was a big moment for Martin Luther, because that was what took him from his normal path in life to become, I think, an iron worker, if I'm not mistaken. Whatever his father's profession was, he was following in the steps to be in the profession that his father was with. And that event right there changed everything for him. He joined a monastery right after that and ends up developing his personal theology, and then and it goes on, and eventually everybody knows how Martin Luther turns out, nailing the 95 Theses and protesting Rome. Martin Luther sees that as an event that, like, from God, that changed the trajectory of his life. Right. You could say the same thing for AI. Of course, God can use AI to change the trajectory of somebody, to convict them of their sin and to flip things around within their life. So we don't want to deny that in any way. But on the contrary, as we've been saying, kind of drawing this distinction the whole time, it takes a level of discernment when applying AI in certain ways. There's definitely harmful ways that this thing can be used, but nevertheless, Jacob's right to say that the gospel can be found within AI in certain respects.
I was so glad that you brought up books as technology, because we take that for granted now, but there was a time when books were revolutionary. And the gospel has been spread through the use of books for centuries now. And also, books have been used to spread a lot of false teachings and false religions. Similarly, in one prompt, I can ask AI for a perfect summary of the gospel that reaches, every generation possible. And in the next prompt, I can ask it for a justification of any other religion, and it will spit it out as well. So while it can be used for great good, it can also be used for great evil as well. So it just repeating what Eric just said, it takes great discernment, and it takes a willingness to engage with the technology. I'm sure that there were some rejectors of books. They're like, no, the oral tradition is the only way.
We're sticking with stone tablets, baby.
Yeah.
yeah.
You use your codices over there.
Right. But I bet they could have never imagined, they could never have imagined the Bible being flown across the North Korean, South Korean border and changing people's hearts and lives in North Korea towards Christ. That we might not be able to see the full impact of AI and the impact of AI for the gospel now, but it's something to be wary of and to be at least willing to engage with. To engage in the conversation with, at least.
Yeah. So I think the big question that's still on my mind, and like you said, maybe we can come back and talk about this again, is, like, what are the ethics of preaching? Like, what is it that makes us feel uncomfortable with the idea of artificial intelligence being used in a sermon, right? Like, what? Because I think I certainly feel hesitant. It feels cheap to me, right? It feels like a quick way of getting out of something. Like it feels like a quick way of getting a job done, but we do that in other ways too, and are not super concerned about it. Is there a merit in making things harder than they have to be? And like, so I think that maybe there's a broader conversation there about the nature of our current age and expediency being kind of king. The quickness, everything being at your fingertips and everything being easy. Like, what is it? How is that discipling us to think and act? But anyways, that's still on my mind, but it's been a good conversation.
Yeah, we'll definitely, I would love to continue talking about that.
Yeah. Eric, anything from you before we close?
I got nothing to add.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to this episode of the Triclinium. If you'd like to reach out to us, we would love to hear from you. You can do so at sophomorosofficial@gmail.com. That's SOPHOMOROS official@gmail.com. And if you'd like to, you could rate our podcast.
Do it.
Do it. We dare you. We dare you. We double dog dare you. I actually don't care about that at all, though. So, like, I would rather you just email us. That'd be fun. Because I've never gotten a single email from Sophomoros Official.
Somebody email us.
For the love of goodness, send us physical mail. But I'm not gonna give you my address, so you'll have to figure it out. You have to use AI to figure it out. Anyways, have a great rest of your day, and as always, may Christ be exalted.